Recording in progress.
Commissioner Zemke?
Present.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Present.
Commissioner Chang-Crowley?
Present.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Here.
Great. We'll start today's meeting with public comment. If anyone has a comment on an item not on today's agenda, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in order.
I don't see any hands that are raised.
I don't see any. Excuse me. Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Do any commissioners have items they would like to pull? Or do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. Melanie, roll call, please.
Oh, we should check for public comment.
Is there any public comment?
I don't see any hands raised.
I don't either. Okay, Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Commissioner Chang-Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
The motion carries. We'll move to.
Nancy, can I just make one quick comment I'm glad that's on the consent account, the consent agenda, and that is that I am glad that Sea Cider is going to be one of the new businesses that will be partnering with the Harbor District. So, and I know that Meredith Cassian, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Meredith, but welcome aboard and thank you for being part of our Harbor District business area.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, we'll move on to the discussion items now. Item 9, audited basic financial statements. Julie, this is your item.
Yes, we have David Alvey here too from Mason Associates to answer any questions anyone might have on this. Just as a general background, they audited our financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. The financial statements were prepared by district staff and audited by Mason Associates. The audit financials include an audit opinion, required communications, and attachments, supplementary information. A financial statement audit involves procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and financial disclosures the district makes in its annual financial statements. The auditors obtain this audit evidence through several ways, including interviewing district staff to learn about policy changes in staffing, or changes in our processes that may have occurred since last fiscal year's audit that could potentially affect our internal controls. Talking to us to gain an understanding of our business and internal controls we have in place to determine if our controls can be relied upon to potentially catch accounting errors, detect or prevent fraud. Reviewing our account balances from this fiscal year and comparing it to last fiscal year to identify material changes and corroborating the reasons for those changes. Testing specific accounts at the detailed transaction level, they determine if the district reported them properly and to see if the district is following the policies, such as the purchasing and procurement policy. The audit opinion is a clean, unmodified opinion on the district's financial statements. That means that they did not find any material misstatements during the audit, and they believe that the financial statements fairly represent the district's financial position in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles of the United States. The audit affirms the continuing stable financial position of the district and the accuracy of our year-end financial statements. In addition, Mays and Associates provided a memorandum of internal control to the Board of Commissioners. No new matters were identified. Additionally, our auditors did not find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in our internal controls. This means the auditors did not find any large departures from what our policies and processes say we should be doing compared to what we are doing in practice. The financial statements reflect a net position of $47 million in fiscal year 2021, which is an increase of $2 million compared to the $45 million in fiscal year 2019-20. The district's operating revenues decreased by $55,000 or 1.3%, while non-operating revenues decreased by $97,000 or 1.1%. The district's operating expenses increased by $967,000 or 9.6%, mainly due to election costs in 2021, increases in salaries and wages, and increases in legal fees. Aggregate net pension liabilities are $2.9 million, and net OPEB liabilities are $3.3 million. So with that, that concludes the report. A big shout out to Boomer and all of the people in the financial section of the district. This is, ever since I've been here, we have not had any management comments, which is a huge compliment to our staff here. And with that, I'll turn it over to David to see if he wants to make any comments, or to the board to see if they would like to ask any questions.
I also want to thank Boomer and your finance team. You guys got a great group working under you, and the audit process went very smoothly with no major hiccups. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Julie. I'm very proud of the work that you, Boomer, and all of your staff do, and the continued stable financial position of the district. Do any commissioners have questions or comments today on the report?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Lorenz?
David, I have a request for you. One of the important aspects of an audit is something that you've pointed out at every one of our meetings, and that is that you look for areas in controls where controls might be lacking. And maybe you could just elaborate on that, because that's such an important part of an audit, and our district's done that very well. And just for the public to know, that maybe some people who don't really understand what that's about.
Sure. So internal controls is really important, especially our firm takes it very seriously, where we want to make sure that not a single person can initiate, authorize, and record a transaction without somebody else looking at it, some kind of review process. And it's very important to have those segregations between who does the bookkeeping and who does the authorization. So not one person can do something that could either be fraudulent or just be a simple error and cause a financial statement, cause the financial statements to be materially incorrect. And so when we do our testing of internal controls, we pull samples of disbursements to make sure they're following your purchasing policy and make sure they're properly authorized, following the contracts. We pull samples of employees to make sure that the pay rates and the timesheets all match to what's approved. We do extensive testing on capital assets to make sure what's purchased is actually being booked correctly and depreciated correctly on the books. And when we look at the internal control environment, we take all those things into account. And it's really interesting, especially, I'll sum it up because I'm getting kind of over myself, but the audit process is really a risk management process. So we go in expecting to see certain things. And as we go, if we see that nobody's reviewing journal entries, or, oh my gosh, the bank rec hasn't been done in 6 months, that changes our risk assessment live. And we have to do more tests to get comfortable with the controls in place.
And if I may, I'd like to make one more comment. And thank you for that, because that was a nice review of it. I would never been able to say it that way. As far as the process, it's a big process, so staff has to work very hard with you, and it takes some time and effort. But the even bigger process is getting to a point where someone like you comes in and they find almost nothing or nothing in that view, because there's so many places where just simple things can just fall off the map. So I'd like to say thank you to our staff, because it's a tremendous job by our financial staff. They've over the years have just meticulously worked with you and these processes, and this is where we are now. It's really fantastic.
Commissioner Chang Crawley, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. So Julie, I want to thank you and the staff too for all the hard work. We've certainly come a long way since the end of 2019. And I'm glad that your staff and you have done such a great job to the point where, you know, we're getting those, the Goya, those awards and for, you know, clean financials. And I think that, David, your job as the auditor confirms that we're on the right track. So thank you. I think that we should be very proud of the fact that we're in good financial health and that things are above board and transparent now since the end of 2019 until now. So I want to thank, you know, again, the staff. And Jim, I know you came in at that time, and thank you for your leadership too, in inspiring your staff to just continue to perform and do the work that we need to get done to make sure that we're good stewards of tax dollars. Thank you.
Okay, if those are all commissioner comments, I'll just thank you again for your presentation. And we'll move on to item 10. Event permit for Half Moon Bay Triathlon. Jim and Lizzie, this is your item.
I'll take the initial brief.
Okay.
And good afternoon, once again, President Reiring, Vice President Zemke, and Commissioners. Item 10 concerns an event permit for USA Productions. USA Productions LLC has requested an event permit from the Harbor District to conduct a portion of the 2022 Half Moon Bay Triathlon on Harbor District property. Excuse me, an area subject to the jurisdiction of the Harbor District. The application was submitted by Ryan Coelho, and the CEO of USA Productions and race director of the Half Moon Bay Triathlon, and I see that he is present here at this meeting. USA Productions LLC has also requested a waiver of a portion of the fees. The event is scheduled to take place on Sunday, April 10th, 2022. The applicant has already started advertising the event and has an active webpage for athletes to register. Pursuant to the San Mateo County Harbor District event policy, the general manager does not have the authority to approve an event permit for an event of this size and complexity. Thus, if approved, it must be approved by the Harbor Board. The Harbor Master of Pillar Point has been consulted in regards to the triathlon, and stated Pillar Point staff in Harbor could support the event as outlined and if approved. A new issue and potential conflict with the triathlon has been identified since the drafting of the staff report, which I've already advised you via email. And that email is also posted on our webpage with a link to this agenda. The issue is the salmon season opener. For the first time in recent history, Pillar Point We'll have a salmon season opener in April, more specifically April 2nd, the weekend before the scheduled triathlon. We expect parking lots to be full and the boat launch to be very, very busy. To address this issue or mitigate this issue, the harbor master will restrict parking lot C3, which is the upper trailer truck parking lot, to trucks and boat trailers only. Parking lot C1, where the old RV lot was, will be open parking on a first come, first served basis. And the applicant will be responsible to ensure race participants do not interfere with the boat launch. Parking lot C3, the crab lot, will be occupied by the triathlon. For background, previous triathlons took place on April 18th, April 17th, April 23rd, April 22nd, and May 5th, so all around the state. Taking into consideration the listed reasons to deny a permit in policy 541 and the additional steps to control parking and race participants, staff recommends approval of the athletic event 4 permit. However, staff does not recommend a fee waiver. USA Productions LLC is asking for a 50% fee waiver. USA Productions is a commercial entity. The applicant produces several other annual sporting events to include the California Triathlon, Folsom Triathlon, Monterey Triathlon, and the Oakland Triathlon. The entry fees for the Half Moon Bay Triathlon range from $140 to $270 per person for early registration, and rates will go up on August or on the 28th of March as advertised on the webpage. As the athletic event 4 posted by Commercial LLC, the San Mateo County Harbor District event schedule provides the following with respect to district imposed fees: an application fee of $5,830, the permit fee of $7,930, and then an additional fee for water-related activities or water-related fees of $5,595 for a total fee of $19,355. The applicant's already provided with the event application the district application fee of $5,830. The applicant is asking 50% weight fee waiver be granted under the condition that the applicant donate the waived portion to Sea Hugger, a local nonprofit that shares the district's mission to manage and improve water quality at Pillar Point Harbor. Pursuant to the event fee schedule, the general manager has the authority to waive the fees up to and including $2,500 per event for a nonprofit coastal dependent applicant. In that the applicant is not a nonprofit, is requesting a fee waiver of $9,677.50, and the event is not coastal dependent, the general manager does not have the authority to waive any fees with respect to this application. The board does have the authority to waive the fees under district policy. The district specifically reserves the right to waive required fees for an event that is deemed to serve significant district or other public interest as determined by the board. While the Half Moon Bay Triathlon does promote healthy recreational activities in and around Pillar Point Harbor, as well as access to the harbor itself and the ocean, staff does not believe that meets the threshold of significant district or public interest. The recommended motion: approve an athletic event permit for without fee waiver to USA Productions LLC to host a portion of the 2022 Half Moon Bay Marathon or Triathlon on district-owned property, and authorize the general manager to take the necessary steps to issue said permit in accordance with district policy 541 and board direction. And again, Mr. Coelho is online if you have questions for him, and I also stand by for questions.
Nancy?
Thank you, Jim. Did somebody call my name?
Oh yeah, I was gonna make the motion to approve the athletic event 4 permit without a fee waiver. It's pretty much what the staff recommends. I agree with that.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We can have discussion. Do any commissioners have comments or discussion?
I guess my question would be, I I've never been at Pillar Point Harbor when they've had a triathlon, but just wanted a better understanding of how the triathlon works and making sure it doesn't get in the way of people launching boats and boats getting in the way of swimmers and things like that. So if somebody could give me a kind of a brief rundown about how that works.
So
In a position that because of COVID, I have not been here for a triathlon. We did not host one in 2020 or 21. So this is also new to me. But John Moran, our operations manager, may have a better handle on it since he's been here for several years. John?
Good afternoon, commissioners. In the past, when we have hosted the event, the part of the event that takes place at Pillar Point Harbor, the event organizers have had rescue vessel attendees, to travel around with the swimmers, and they set up buoys and are working in the outer harbor, which has not significantly impacted boat traffic or district operations.
Thank you, John. I see we have a member of the public with their hand raised, Sherry Ingalls.
All righty, I think I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
Correct.
All righty. Thank you very much for recognizing me. Thank you, commissioners, for putting this notice out about this. My concern, I have been around 17 years at the harbor, well, owning the shop, and 30 years before that. So I'm well aware of what happens in the morning with the triathlon. The first one was a disaster as far as customers entering the parking lot area, the confusion, the backing up on Highway 1. We definitely need to make sure the plans are really well laid out as far as entry in the morning with their vehicles in consideration with our vehicles from our customers. We had employees that were told they couldn't park. We had customers that were told they couldn't park in the harbor. So that's really got to be clear. With limited time here, I'm going to go quick. On their application, their attachment number 2, their plan on page 2, it talks about expo time 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on April 9th. That's Saturday. So is this a 2-day event? And if so, where is that supposed to take place? Also, they're scheduling this April. Well, if we're able to continue to have salmon season, that is really going to be a mess for the private boaters. I'm not worried about CPFVs other than getting our customers in, but the launch ramp is going to be, especially since it's opening of the season, there's definitely a possibility of confrontation. So if they could schedule this for the last week in March, there's no fishing in March. It wouldn't be a problem. The timing of swimming, they're starting the swimming at 6:45. That's just barely daybreak.
Oh, we lost you. Sherry, I'm afraid we lost you, Sherry, but if she comes back on, Lizzie, she had a few seconds left. This
President Ryrie?
And
Ryan.
if they could delay till 8 o'clock, I think the boats would be able to launch. Am I back yet?
Yeah, I can hear you.
can we let her?
Question.
Can we let Sherry finish her? I couldn't hear her very well, the ending part of what she had to say.
Very well either.
Sherry, I've sent you a request to unmute. I don't know if you can see that.
If she's on the phone.
In the meantime, Jim, can I ask you, was there any coordination between our staff and the event staff about timing or the date?
The date was set before the salmon opener was set. And for Pillar Point Harbor to have a salmon opener on April 2nd is very, very rare. And we found out just recently, basically last week, that it was going to be April 2nd. So there was no conflict with the salmon season. And I talked to Sherry about the parking conflict, and what she's also asking is to delay the opening for the swim to 8 a.m. Because most boats would have already launched and be out of the way by 8 a.m. For the salmon season, and reduce the conflict. So she was concerned about boats having a place to park the trailers and trucks, and then also parking lot access and direction. And then finally, we discussed delaying the start till 8 a.m. And I haven't gone back and discussed that with Ryan at all, but he's on the line right now and he can discuss that if you so desire.
Yeah, can everybody hear me? This is Ryan.
Okay.
Hello. Yes, and thanks for having me on today, and thanks for taking the time to review everything through the board. And to answer on the question regarding the flow and with the boats in the water and so forth, we over the last few years we've conducted it for 7 years now. We had actually changed the in and out, or I should say the outbound of the swimmers from the water and then back into the parking lot, so that there wasn't a cross at the boat ramp any longer. They would then enter the parking lot through the steps coming up, and then enter parking lot, of course, adjacent to where all of course the boats and the trailers would be. But moving that inflow of swimmers to not cross at the ramp was tremendously beneficial, just based on past years' experience. And then, of course, with just if it's a few boats to a ton of boats coming, wanting to launch their boats, it definitely reduced the amount of impact and any type of interference with the boats in switching that up. And then going back to what Sherry had said regarding flow, and of course, and then what Jim had said regarding starting a little bit later on the swim. Now, we have tried to start the swim as soon as possible once we get sun, so that basically we are minimizing the impact on, of course, Highway 1 in full as much as possible. And that's been the reason why we've, in working with Caltrans, why we've had such a early start, so that we get all the cyclists off the road as soon as possible, and in a seamless fashion. And that's been looked at over the years based on reducing when the waves go off, because there's multiple waves in the triathlon. So it's not a mass start. We have waves of 150 people or less, and they're going off in 3-minute increments. And so that has been kind of looked at in terms of how to, our time in and out of water is normally in the range of about an hour and a half. And then we have everybody off the roads completely and onto the trails for the running portion by no later than about 9 o'clock. If we were to move that to 8 o'clock as a start time, then that would put us into the mid-morning or late morning time frame for when now the cyclists would be off the roads, which then, as you all know, it's very, very impactful at that point during the day for just people coming in from other parts of the Bay Area. So again, going back to the years of experience, we've had our lessons learned, obviously, with as Sherry said, with hosting the triathlon and minimizing as much impact as possible. But ultimately, we've built a solid partnership with your staff and made it as seamless as possible throughout the years. So, hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Ryan. I see Sherry Ingalls. I think she is unmuted now. Sherry, did you want to finish your comment? Oh, no, you're not unmuted.
Yeah, it looks muted now.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I don't know, my internet lost its connection somehow. Thank you again for understanding. And I'm not opposed to this triathlon. I just want to make sure it works well for everyone at the harbor at the time. I think the triathlon's a great thing. doesn't really do much as far as for the businesses there. Actually, it's one of the, kind of the opposite. We don't see as many people because they want to stay the heck away from the harbor until after this is over. But that's okay. We all give and take as far as that. I still think, the timing of the swimming. Sorry about that. Timing the swimming. I don't know if an extra hour difference with the swim is going to make as much of a difference with the boat launches as it would to Highway 1. So still should be considered. And then we didn't address my other two questions. Is it possible in the future that we could see if this could take place in the end of March instead of April? Because there are no fishing seasons January, February, March. So there would be way less conflict. And then the other thing is there anything that takes place on Saturday? And I think that'll do it. So thank you very much for listening.
And I can answer the question on Saturday. That's ultimately the packet pickup. So people are coming in and out all day, picking up their packet for the next day of racing. So that's mainly the only thing that's going on for that day. Of course, we're setting up early morning. We started about 8 a.m., setting all of our equipment up, getting everything set for the race specifically within the parking lot and then within where the finish line and so forth will be. And then also regarding her other question regarding, starting in March and having the event occur. Sure. I mean, I have no problem with that. I would love to. And, we've dealt with this over the years where we just never know when the salmon season is going to fall. And then we've had to adjust the date, reason why we had a May date was because of salmon season falling in one year on the same date of the event. So I have no problem with all pushing it to March in the following years at all. That's if you all feel that would be a better fit for the event, and then I have no problem with that.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. I am going to call on commissioners for comment on this, but I do want to point out again that the triathlon has the potential of seriously impacting the ability of boaters to launch and park if it's permitted for the 10th. And that if we do permit it, the district will enforce a trailer only parking in the upper C lot for trucks and trailers. Commissioner Jen Crawley.
Yes, thank you. So I am listening to everyone's concerns, and I certainly respect the fact that this triathlon is, obviously an event that we should support. However, having done multiple half marathons, like the Big Sur half marathon for, since probably 7 years, and other running events on the coast, like the pumpkin run. I think I've done that pumpkin run for probably 9 or 10 years now, probably 9 years. I am worried about the last minute, almost lack of coordination. And I know it's salmon season's unexpected, but lack of coordination with the harbor district. And I mean, maybe I'm off base a little on saying lack of coordination. Maybe it was more coordinated than I thought, but I know that there are traffic impacts and also parking impacts. And normally it wouldn't be as big of a deal for me, except for I know that salmon season is a big deal for the harbor, and people want to be outside, and I think it's an important time for them to be outside since we're really kind of opening up now more fully. And I mean, we've always been open, but I just think that people are excited about this. So I am a little troubled about how this just didn't seem as coordinated. And I'm not even sure about how the parking situation would be, because I think the parking problem is going to be worse than normal since people are going to want to go out there. Traffic is going to be, traffic is already bad, but I think it's going to be worse. And then there's nothing that you can do about that per se. It's just bad. But Ryan, I don't know. I don't know when did y'all start planning this? Because I can tell you with the Big Sur half marathon and the Big Sur marathon that they're like 1.5 years out. right? And I don't even know what's going on with the Half Moon Bay Half Marathon right now, if that's even happening these days, or did this replace that? I don't know, but I can tell you, having done some pretty major half marathons, and the Big Sur is world famous, and the Big Sur Marathon, I think, is a Boston qualifier, and they're packed, right? And there's a waiting list and all of that. There's a lottery, whatever they want to bring in people. But, as a very slow runner, I'm always at the end of the stick on this. But how far out did y'all plan for this event? I mean, especially for a try, because you're doing swimming, biking, and running. And if you're swimming in the harbor, knowing that we have a commercial fishing industry here, I'd love to know how y'all have planned this and how far in advance y'all planned this with the harbor district.
Well, to be honest, I actually had taken, as a race organizer, I had taken 2 almost half years off because of the pandemic. So I, of course, had to find other financial means because USA Productions was my full-time business, of course, in advance of the pandemic. So that being said, I had paid all of my fees for back in 2020 and worked with Lizzie, who's fantastic, by the way. She's tremendous. So her and I came to an agreement that you guys could just keep my money and then we would just coordinate on the coming years. Well, then 2021 didn't occur, and then 2021 popped, or 2022 popped up, and of course, yes, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm as transparent as anyone. I didn't coordinate soon enough, probably with Lizzie, to get on the agenda and so forth. But I have 9 jurisdictions that I deal with for the Half Moon Bay Triathlon, so there is quite a bit of coordination that needs to occur. So that being said, Lizzie did her job in terms of getting it onto the schedule and the agenda as we are today, and I appreciate her doing that. But yes, you are correct, Virginia. I could have done a lot more better job, but I had other things that were on my plate ultimately. Normally, this is about 6 to 7 months out from the event that I would start coordination. I have worked with the salmon. There's a group that I worked with based on the salmon season opening each year, and I normally reach out to them in January, February, but they did not know an exact date for when that was going to open, or even a prod date. So that would normally be, my coordinations are always tides, salmon season, and then of course all my jurisdictions for who I'm working with to do swim, bike, and run for a day of triathlon. I'm nowhere near anywhere close to a Big Sur marathon or half marathon. We're looking at probably no more than 700, 800 triathletes. That's still a lot, but we're not in the range of 5,000, 6,000, or 10,000 athletes rolling through. So parking is much easier. We've done that at the hotel for every year that it's been conducted. So that's been coordinated very, very well. And then normally everybody's in and out of the harbor by about 11 to 11:30 a.m. So it's a fairly quick event, but I do understand your concerns with the coordination for sure.
Great, thanks very much, Ryan. Commissioner Mateo, you have your hand raised.
I think General Manager Pruitt pointed out that we didn't know a week or 2 ago that salmon was going to be open then. I think we've made the point that, as Sherry pointed out, that March would be a good time, February a good time. So I think we kind of have direction going forward that we'll try not to interfere with salmon. Salmon's earliest possibility is April. And there was even a week and a half ago, it was slated to possibly open May 15th or May 16th. So I think it's good to be aware of salmon, good to be aware of fishing, good to be aware of March being a potential better time. And I think Ryan's heard us all loud and clear. And now that the pandemic's over, I think that everybody's a little bit better tuned up on this.
Great. And if any commissioner wants to make a motion on this item, I would just ask.
Like, there's a motion and a second, Nancy.
Oh, we already have a motion and second on this? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Tricia, do we need to add that the Harbor District will enforce a trailer-only parking in the upper C lot for trucks and trailers? Or is that just Harbor business and they'll take care of that at the event?
I'd look to Jim on that if that's something he thinks he has the authority to do with your direction.
Okay. Jim, do you need
President Reiring, I see that as simple harbor operations.
Great. Okay, good. If there are no further, Commissioner Lorraine.
Nancy?
Are you still Commissioner Zemke?
Yes,
Yeah.
just wanted to make one comment. Now, when we're approving this, I assume that we're not changing the time, the swim time?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Commissioner Lorenz, your hand is up.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and comments. First question is, have you considered or even looked at the area where the swimmers are? I couldn't tell from the staff report where swimmers are actually going to be swimming, but that area on the, what would that be, the southeast side of the harbor is pretty shoaled up right now. So if the tides are low in the morning, there will be a squeeze between swimmers and the traffic lane for boats being launched. So I'm not sure if anyone's looked at that, but it might be a good idea to check it out. So that's one. The other is opening salmon season is pandemonium at our harbor because it's opening salmon season. So layering this marathon with salmon season is we are asking our staff to do an awful lot of work. And so I would like to hear from John or Jim about how they feel about handling that. Because to me, it seems like an impossible task, to be honest. And then the other thought I had was, have the organizers or staff looked at doing the swim portion of this triathlon on the northeast side of the harbor? Because I wouldn't, if you did the swim there wouldn't be any impact on the boaters heading out to the entrance. It's completely clear. So there you have my questions.
I'll turn to John to answer the operations since he's closer to that and runs the operations for the harbor. John?
Commissioners, as I stated before, we have worked cooperatively, and the organizers of the event have in the past had sufficient buoys and vessels out there to allow boaters that are launching at the ramp to stay clear of all the swimmers. This will be, because it's the second weekend of the salmon season, it will be very busy. That's for sure. There will be trailer trucks with trailers attached to them parked all the way out onto Highway 1. It's going to most likely be a very busy time. All that said, we will ask for volunteers from staff, which obviously the fees for our commercial activity permits reimburse the district for, so that we can have ample harbor staff on duty. And it's going to be challenging. And I like your idea, Ed, of having them over more on the northwest side, over by the yacht club. That would be, having the swimmers go from there would be far less impactful. But again, we've done it several years right there just to the east of the launch ramp. And most of or all of the boats, that are launching are making a very direct route to the harbor entrance to exit. So, as long as the coordinator, again, has as many assist vessels out there to ensure that everybody, all the swimmers stay off to the east of the launch ramp, and boaters know where they're at. And obviously all of the boats that are being launched are supposed to be going at idle speed until they exit the harbor. And our staff will be assisting to ensure that, that everybody is going at a safe speed, and they'll be out of the water by 10 o'clock.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you, John, is that you're saying it's going to be exciting, but still manageable.
It's going to be very challenging, I think, and it's going to, definitely, in all the additional traffic is going to be more of a challenge than if we were not hosting this large event, in the second weekend of salmon season. But staff will do as directed, and then we'll obviously rely on the event coordinator to have ample rescue guide boats out there to ensure that there is a separation between the swimmers and the clear route from the launch ramp to the harbor entrance.
And I have a question for the organizers. So the path on cycles will go down. I guess the question I have is, the trailers that are parked on Highway 1, are the cyclists going to be riding on the road, having to share the road with trailers on the side of the road and the cars going by, or are they going through the harbor? How's that going to happen?
So the majority of the bike course is on Highway 1, heading southbound. They go down, they turn around at the Safeway intersection, and then come back up, and then they come back through the backside of the harbor.
Okay.
And then to go back to your question regarding the northeast side of the harbor swim at the yacht club. One year we did do it at the yacht club, and that was, I think, in year 2, and we just tried that out. One thing that we found with that scenario was that it was very shallow. Like when we had a shift in a low to a high, which was very quickly that day, it became a very difficult swim. And then, of course, getting out, then we had roadways there, which was all residential, where we had to, and some businesses, depending upon where we had the bikes staged. It just didn't seem as safe and as easy to organize when we're now impacting either residents or businesses that are on those streets over there by the yacht club. So.
Understood.
Yeah.
Did you check the situation with shoaling at the southeast side of the harbor? Because it's significant.
So now I looked at, so our tides are going to be, we shouldn't have any problem with tides that day. So we should be fine, because we're going to be at a minus, we had a 2 and a 4 during the event. Not even that. So we shouldn't have any problems.
Okay, thank you.
But I do hear your concerns about the salmon season. I mean, I definitely do. And
Commissioner Chancarelli, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question for Ryan. So just how do y'all determine what dates you have your triathlon on, or your date or weekend?
That's a fantastic question. So Several things. One is Easter. We always are very far away from Easter in any way, shape, or form. Then we work with the car. Oh my gosh, what's your big car show?
The Dream Machine.
Yeah, Dream Machine. So we work with that organizer, making sure it's not on top of Dream Machines. And then there's one other event that we stay away from as well. So the biggest thing is Easter, and then Dream Machines. And that's how we've always kind of coordinated that April timeframe each year. But again, I have no problem with moving it to March, and we wouldn't have any impact with.
No, it's not that, Ryan. We know that this is just such an anomaly, and I think just so many unexpected situations have happened for over the last 2.5 years. So I think that's why. For me, that's why I'm a little concerned. But I do now have a question for staff and or Jim. And maybe we don't want to do this because it'll be even more crowded. But do you think that if we need help, that maybe we can reach out to the high schools or even the Girl Scout troops to fill in some of the gaps, for volunteer hours? And maybe this isn't even an appropriate job for kids, but I just don't know. I'm just trying to figure out a way that we can, make things smoother operationally and logistically, because it really sounds like the logistics are of a concern to, at least for me, but others as well on the board, other commissioners.
Supporting the event, we'll be leaning heavily on the organizer to provide enough volunteers or workers to ensure that the swimmers are walking between the sign-in tables or the event in the parking lot out to the beach to make sure they're not interfering with the launch area. The same thing with their safety boats and their monitors on the beach. That'll all be up to the responsibility of the organizer. We'll be on hand to watch the organizer, make sure the organizer is doing what they need to keep everybody safe, and our normal jobs in the harbor of keeping the harbor safe and operable for all users that day.
Thank you. So Ryan, just a quick question. Who have you reached out to for volunteers?
That's a good question. We work with the high school each year. Sea Huggers is actually going to be providing several volunteers, well over 20 to 25, if not more, based on our partnership with them now. And then we've worked with several other organizations around Half Moon Bay, as well as staffing organizations that come in. We put volunteers at every roadway. We put volunteers along the trail. We have volunteers, along the boat ramp, at the entrance of the harbor, at the entrance of the hotel. We have well over 150 volunteers that we bring in for the event, and then another probably 40 to 50 staff. So it's definitely quite an organization.
Right. So just out of curiosity, have you talked to anyone from Coastside CERT, for example? That may be overkill, but they have a team of people who are familiar with the coastside and the roads and the trails and all of that. And I'm just throwing it out there because, it may not be, you might need a different type of volunteer who is really familiar with this type of safety, the safety issues that might confront not just your athletes, but anyone using the public spaces.
Especially this year.
Yeah.
Especially this year.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I have not reached out to Coastside CERT, but I will for sure.
Okay.
That has not been an organization that has been on my radar.
They're fantastic. They're fantastic. I see Michelle Dragony's hand up. Nancy, President Ryring. I know she's involved with Coastside CERT, but I don't know why she has her hand up, but we may want to ask her about that.
Okay.
But I think they may be a really great group if they're even available. I have no idea.
I will open the mic up to Michelle Dragony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I am with Coastside CERT, and we just had a traffic class. So we would love to get our traffic on. So yes, do call us, and these guys have my contact information, and I will get you all hooked up. But yeah, we'd love to come out and practice. We also have ham radio operators. Do you need those?
Fantastic. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. That's, Virginia, that's a huge, huge help, because it ultimately, what we found in terms of, even with the voters coming in, everybody seems to just be on edge that morning. And you just have to have the right individuals. We don't put kids in front of individuals like that, dealing with parking or dealing with, people that just are trying to get to the water. It needs to be someone that can either speak the language or has the right approach. And so it's super important to have the right individuals in certain places, for sure.
Well, I'm a CERT myself, and that's why, I think they may be a great resource for you, Ryan, number one. And number two, I didn't even think about it from that perspective, Michelle, regarding possibly, making it a practice session. But and as a ham radio operator myself, licensed ham radio operator, I think that you might be able to maximize your safety, from distances too. But I think that's a good idea that Michelle brought up, that it could be kind of like a drill for them at the same time as making our public spaces in our public area, pretty safe. And they have the little yellow vests, so they're noticeable when they're in the parking lot or on Highway 1 or on the coastal trail.
We know, Michelle, we make donations, so all of our volunteers are either it goes back to their charity of choice, or we go directly to your organization. So
thank you. I do think that Coastside CERT should be a resource you look at.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Tancarelli. And Commissioner Lorraine, is that an artifact, or is your hand up again?
No, it's not up again.
Okay.
There you
Any
go.
other comments? Or are we ready to have a roll call on this item? Looks like roll call. Melanie?
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Chancarelli?
You called me already, but I said aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Thank you for all your comments, commissioners, and Ryan and John and Jim. I think we were able to massage the operational bit of this event a little bit in a way that will make it safer. And thank you, Michelle, too, for your input. Now we'll move on to item 11, Coastal Cruise. Jim, would you like to present this item on e-bikes to the board?
Thank you for the opportunity. Once again, good afternoon. Item 11 concerns a potential permit application by Coastal Cruise LLC. Staff is seeking direction from the board on whether staff should continue to work with Coastal Cruise on a commercial activity permit application. On March 3rd, 2022, staff received a presentation from Coastal Cruise concerning an e-bike rental business. That presentation is attached to the staff report and posted on our webpage. The business is designed to operate from a self-contained converted 20-foot shipping container. The electrical source to charge the bicycles will come from solar panels on top of those containers. Coastal Cruise is interested in obtaining a a commercial activity permit to install 1 or 2 of their containers at Pillar Point Harbor. The initial business will begin with 10 e-bikes with an increase as demand increases. The bikes would be limited to 15 miles an hour and would operate along the coast from Fitzgerald Marine Preserve to south of Half Moon Bay. The speed limit on the coastal trails, from what I can tell by research and reaching out, is 10 to 15 miles an hour, depending where you are. And it is further noted by the state parks that when pedestrians, bicycle, and children are present even 10 miles an hour might be too fast, so they encourage bikers to use good judgment. The district would receive in revenue an annual permit fee, a price per foot for the container and operations, and a percentage of sales suggested at 2.5% for the initial cap, and then negotiated for the follow-on caps. The district does have space for the operation. The first option and recommended option would be opposite Half Moon Bay Kayak Company, southwest of Pillar Point Boulevard. Option 2 would be in the southwest corner of parking lot 3B, the crab storage parking lot. It is staff's recommendation that the Harbor District move forward with the permit application with Coastal Cruise, but seeks the board's guidance on how we should proceed. Orlando, one of the founding partners of Coastal Cruise LLC, is also here if you have any questions specific to Coastal Cruise. That ends my presentation. And again, staff is asking whether the board would support this type of activities and whether we should continue down the road of working on that permit with Coastal Cruise.
Thank you, Jim. Orlando, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your idea?
Yeah, sure. I think, good afternoon. I think everyone's familiar with the horrendous traffic around Half Moon Bay. It's kind of just how this idea came about. It initially was more geared towards selling to locals, giving them a chance to actually, because I don't think realistically, that's what we wanted to do, to give them a chance to have a way to get around during all this traffic, because that's how me and my friends were getting around. And even just go get groceries, I have friends that live along the coast, go visit them, take our kids to each other's houses. And on the weekends, you just know it's just completely hectic. And then it kind of transformed into this thing where we want to sell the bikes, but also, rent them. Why not, do both? And yeah, that's pretty much our goal.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have comments? In particular, Jim is asking if we approve of this concept, what kinds of restrictions would we need to specifically address? Any messages on safety? Is the trail adequate? Wildlife safety? Commissioner Mateusz.
See, I was just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to take up any trailer storage for the launch. The area where the fish buyers have the 3 storage areas, or where the marine mammal area, I don't know if that's a good area. I don't know if we can get it. I was unclear from the map if that meant on Perch Beach next to the kayak company, or where we could put it that we won't impact parking, because parking's at such a premium. And perhaps we could clarify that.
I was talking about the actual in the corner there on Perch Beach for the location of it. I didn't consider over by the fish buyer building or the mammal center. That's also an option, and there's power over there. We consider those areas too.
Great.
One other thing I forgot to mention is, as part of the rental, Orlando and his team will be providing trail etiquette to the bikers on, making sure they understand they need to announce their presence, say, on your left as they pass people. And then also education on local plants and animals, so they know what they're looking at and seeing and what to avoid.
Well, in this dearth of other comments, I'd like to support this and give it a 1-year try and make sure that if it works on the beach, that's even better. Want to make sure that being on the beach, we don't need a CDP or anything else. So I say let's give this person a chance to get this business and see what it looks like in a year.
Are you making a motion, Tom?
Yes.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I will
I'll
second that.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Virginia.
No, go ahead, Bill.
Oh,
But I see
okay, I will second
Ed's hand is raised.
Commissioner Lorenz?
I've got a couple of questions. E-bikes are here to stay and they're going to keep growing. I cycle on the coastside trails and I'm seeing more and more e-bikes. And I see them in the harbor parking lot. And one thing you can say about humans, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so what I'd like to know is, what are you going to do about enforcement? Because riding an e-bike at 15 miles per hour through especially if it's someone who's never ridden one, through our parking lot, and you run into a pedestrian, you're going to do a lot of damage. So I see a lot of potential for problems with safety. I know you're going to rent them and you can tell them to sign a waiver or whatever, but once they're out on the road, you have no control over their behavior. So our staff will be impacted to some extent. But I'd like to know more about how we're going to keep the rest of the harbor goers safe from bikes, because you're going to definitely increase the traffic.
Yeah, so our belief is that I think we can all agree that there are already a lot of people on the trail that don't know trail etiquette, like even pedestrians, bikes, dog walkers, a bunch of, everyone. Personally, I think it's better if, even renting or not renting, if we just have a board with trail etiquette where people start, where people, the harbor is a big starting point for the trail. If people can just learn how to, we will have bells on them. People are going to have to wear helmets. Just learning trail etiquette, I think, is just a big issue with just everyone, all the tourists coming into town. We will have if it makes anyone else feel comfortable, we can adjust the speed cap on the bikes to any speed we want. So, if we want to move it down to 10, we can move that to 10 if it seems that 15 is too fast. And an idea that I was having is, if someone just doesn't feel comfortable, if someone wants to ride an e-bike and doesn't feel comfortable, we can let them, after, of course, they sign the waiver, let them just practice. Like, I understand sometimes the parking lot is busy, full of, crab traps and all that, but there usually is space for them to kind of would be able to ride a bike relatively unbothered. So if anyone does feel uncomfortable with the bike or just doesn't seem to have their legs on it yet, like, they can just practice there for a little bit before they take off. And then if they don't feel comfortable, maybe they don't rent it. Or if we just see that they're, never ridden a bike before, we probably won't rent it to them. But there's no real way to enforce it. We're not going to have anyone on the trail just, checking on people. But it's our hope just to teach them how to actually have the knowledge to go up and down the trail, and hopefully it all works out.
Orlando, are there going to be hours of operation, or is this sort of like an open container? And
yeah, sorry, I should make that clear, just because a lot of people with the bikes in San Francisco and stuff, that no, this is just going to be, we don't have the hours operations completely set yet, but we are thinking open at 9:30 and then close till around sunset, because people are going to want to see the sunset, if they're out on the bike. So we're thinking just a little bit after sunset, and then there would also be 2 hourly rates where people can just go for a quick ride and then come back. It's either going to be daily or 2 hour. And if daily, they'd have to, whenever they come rent them out, they have to return them that same night.
I'm very much in support of this concept. I feel like I'd like to see some more information on, what are you going to have actual employees during the hours of operation? I would like to know what those hours of operation are going to be like. And anything else that Jim or John might think of that with regard to safety for this new enterprise?
So I have more comments.
Commissioner Lorenz?
So with respect to safety, I think reducing this, if you do this, you should reduce the speed. 15 miles an hour is probably too fast. And I'd like to point out that if people are renting an e-bike, there's a high, and you did mention this, there's a high probability that it may be their first or second time riding an e-bike. So their level of skill is not going to be the same as someone who comes to the coast with their own personal equipment. So I would suggest lower speed limit, and I would also go as far as to say that there may be areas in the harbor where they should not be allowed to ride, and specifically would be in the parking lots. If it's an e-bike, they want to ride down the coast trail, that's one thing, but riding around our parking lot on the weekend, it's probably not a great idea. We already have a lot of bicycle traffic as it is. So I think it's a great idea, but I see a lot of potential issues with it. The other question I have is it might not be a bad idea to talk to county parks, because people are, with an electric bike, you can ride to the north side of the harbor and ride right up Pillar Point Bluffs. The access there on a bicycle is a little bit challenging. So have you even gone there to check it out? I mean, it seems like
yeah,
some restrictions.
We have on the website. We already have a website going. Our idea is to have set routes, and of course we can't control where everyone goes, but that's on our website. We have 4 different routes that they can click on, and it has restaurants along the way, and they're just labeled route 1 through 4. And that's really what we're going to encourage, especially new, like you said, people that aren't familiar with the area or familiar with bikes, just to stay on these routes. And we're really going to try to hammer that in. And we do want to create like an experience for people, because they are tourists. They don't necessarily know where to go. If I was in somewhere where I didn't know, if someone told me to stay on a certain area, I wouldn't diverge somewhere else. But of course, like you said earlier, there are good people, there are bad people. It's just our hope that they just listen to our guidance when it comes to that. But the set routes, we've rode them on our bikes. They're all perfectly safe. One goes to town, one goes to Kelly, another one goes, yeah. So that's our hope.
Jim, I want to ask what our liability is if we do grant this permit, and if there are miscreants involved somehow with these bike rentals, will it impact our district?
Liability aspect, and I'm attorney for the district, but I did think about that, and they'll be required to have insurance that covers their operation and insurance that indemnifies the district, and have the district named on their policy. So in essence, an e-bike rider from Coastal Cruise getting into an incident on our Harbor District property is almost less liability for us, because we're going to be indemnified from damage.
Does each rider need to hold us harmless?
No, but the
entity.
Insurance policy required by Coastal Cruise does, and that they'll defend us.
Okay, great. And Orlando, I want to ask you, I tried Googling Coastal Cruise Half Moon Bay and I don't see a website. Is it up yet?
No, I mean, I can make it live real quick if you want to just Google it. We made it live, but we started getting actual requests, so we had to shut it down.
Okay.
Some people from the Ritz were emailing us, asking us to take bikes over there, which is something I haven't really talked to you about with the other guys I'm partnered with. But yeah, so we had to unregister it, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Today we're looking for guidance from the board on what should we continue to work with Orlando on a commercial activity permit application, and any guidance you can provide to us. And I hear right now that safety is a significant one, safety in the harbor, also safety for the speed limit between 15 and 10 in coordination with county parks. So
Yeah,
we
and
can
hours
work
of
with Orlando on all those.
and hours of operation.
Yes, hours of operation.
Commissioner Linus, you still have your hand up?
I do. I still have some more questions. So I'm sure that Orlando, you haven't invented this problem. There are other communities that are doing exactly this, especially areas that have high tourist user trails. And maybe either you, I request for you to do a little research on that and give us some idea of what's happening there, but also maybe staff or someone should look into what kinds of issues other communities have had. And we can maybe learn from it. I'm not against doing this, but why invent the wheel if people have solved problems that help?
Personally, I have looked into some areas. Mostly what pops up is stuff in LA. Mainly the problem isn't so much just, and this could be another point that we could address, but mainly the problem hasn't necessarily been with rentals. It's been with actual ownership of people that own. There's just an influx of people owning e-bikes, not necessarily renting. Whenever I see anything about any kind of government entity just talking about this, it always has to be with just people ownership whenever they talk about reviewing the status of e-bikes. So I can try to look at it more, but that's mostly what pops up when and that's something that, I mean, we are planning to sell it to locals as well with a local discount, but that's not necessarily something I've seen as something that I don't know if our population is necessarily big enough to have that issue, but I mean, I'm more than willing to try to, research that and look into it.
Are you going to have an age limit?
We haven't discussed that, but I think
seems like that would be appropriate.
Yeah, obviously there is going to be I don't know if we'd have an official one. I'm talking to to insurance people, and I'm sure they would recommend an age limit, which what we would abide by. I'm sure there's actual laws and regulations for this that they would know. I mean, I'm more than willing to do it. I just don't know what that details.
Right. Well, okay. So for staff anyway, I think this is a fine idea, but I think we need more information surrounding safety and potential impacts that we haven't even thought about. I ride these trails all the time, and people's, there'll be a kid on an e-bike that can go 20 miles an hour, halfway out of control. And I've been in LA down in San Clemente on surf trips, and that's an e-bike heaven. And you got kids that are like 13 years old flying through stop signs. And I mean, there are issues that happen in communities. I'd like to know more about the impact we're going to have within the harbor, but also to our neighbors.
Do that.
Commissioner Chen Crowley?
Look into that and the safety issues.
Okay. Thanks so much. Orlando, I think it's a great idea. So what are your expectations in terms of, riding on the coast, like someone going to lunch at the Ritz-Carlton, for example, or I'm just, because you mentioned the Ritz, right? And so I'm just curious, because this program kind of reminds me of what Facebook did when it was Facebook, and they had their bikes, available for workers or their employees to go from one part of their campus to another part, which, had a little trail as well. And so it just, the bikes were, it was a great idea. And I think a lot of people used them. And clearly they were Facebook's bikes, but, the bikes were not put it back in the right place, or they were left someplace, so, how are y'all going to deal with something like that? And kind of analogous to scooters on college campuses. I know that e-bikes are a little different because they're way more expensive, but I mean, are you anticipating, how to deal with this situation if they're just left somewhere? Or, I'll tell you, with both of my sons during the time they were in college and they were in big schools, so the campuses, allowed for scooters to go from one place to another. I mean, it was just a mess in terms of students leaving them in different places. And then the universities or the company, actually not even the universities, but they had to kind of enforce this. And I think one of my fellow commissioners brought up enforcement, had to make sure that the company had enough staff to go and deal with picking up these scooters and, accidents. And I know safety is a big thing, but what I'm asking may not even be analogous or of a concern, but I'm just mainly reminded of the situation that we've had at Facebook and, the bikes just being kind of left in one place and,
those are all great questions. So I'll just start off by saying we have been talking to the city of Half Moon Bay. I know some of the people that work in the city, and that's actually where we got the 15 mile per hour. That's what they recommended. We have been talking about possible, because I brought up that exact point that we don't want people leaving bikes everywhere. Well, first of all, they're going to be liable for them. So I'm guessing they will take better care of them. If they get stolen, they're responsible. So they would the hope is that they will lock them up and place them off somewhere to the side because we can't stop people if they want to stop by a beach or something we can't stop them from not going to the beach. The whole point is so we have been talking to the city about if we could possibly place some bike racks anywhere. We know there's one at Dunes Beach, and we will have those marked along on the map as well on our routes where there are bike racks where they can, tie them up and lock them. But we're talking to the city about if there's any possibility if we can get something more at other beaches. We don't want. I personally don't want like bikes everywhere along the beaches, but so it would be nice if there were designated areas and we can be like, okay, visit Dunes Beach and lock your bike up here. And this is a good beach to do this, that. And then leave the other beaches, where we don't have bike racks, you don't go there because there's nowhere to lock up your bike. So that's kind of our plan with dealing with people. We want to, our whole idea is to kind of funnel people to areas. We don't want people just going everywhere. And that's our hope, that we can kind of control that situation with, just information, basically.
So another quick question, President Reiring. So have you talked to other stakeholder groups like, I don't know, like the dog groups or wildlife protection or coastal trail protection groups? I think that they're all going to have different concerns. And I think that, and even the city of Half Moon Bay, I know they're big concerned about liability, has trickled down into even water safety with the harbor district or ocean safety with the harbor district. And so, is this something that we need to have a bigger meeting, a meeting with, broader coalition? And I don't want to get in the way, Orlando. I've seen this kind of work, not e-bikes, but like those tandem bikes, like in Pacific Grove and Monterey, that area where they're riding along their trail there. But I think that our area is probably a little less commercial and more, I think a lot of residents use it. A lot of people from within San Mateo County come and use these trails. So I just wanted to find out what kind of outreach you've done to other stakeholders beyond the harbor district.
Sorry, you're talking to me. You mentioned someone else's name earlier. Are you asking me?
Yes.
No, we haven't reached out to anybody else. Just the city. Just because I know the city recently had a meeting about e-bikes. They had one, and then we watched the one previously from last year and saw all their concerns. And And that's kind of what we built our thing around, trying to address what they were concerned with. But other than that, no, we haven't reached out to anybody.
So you do know we're a separate agency from the city with a separate elected board
Yeah,
that actually
we just
covers
knew
it.
they were going to be going that way. So we just wanted to make sure, we just want to just be on good terms with everyone. And I kind of just would respect what they would say, regardless of if they're part of the same entity or not, just because I want to keep, I don't want to be on anyone. Me and all the partners all grew up here. We want to, that's the last thing we want is just create hecticness. Like personally, I would, if anything like crazy happens where it's just a crazy influx of people, like I wouldn't want that around. Like really, this is just something more just a leisure type. I don't know. I wouldn't want just I don't want that either. I guess.
Right. That's why I think it might be important for you to reach out to other stakeholders as well. I mean, okay. I don't know if we have to do something, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not against the concept, like I said, Jim, but I do think we need more information just to make sure that all of our bases are covered.
Oh, I agree. And again, this is a new concept to the Harbor District, and we haven't been involved with e-bikes before or anything like this. So we really wanted just to get the board's feelings towards it. And it sounds like the board is willing to consider e-bikes at the harbor. And several board members said it was a good idea, but need more information. And that's what we'll do. We'll continue to work with Orlando and his team to develop a presentation with answering your questions and a completed commercial activity permit that the board can then vote on at another meeting. But today is just, should we move forward with it or should we just stop it? And if we move forward with it, what's your concerns? And you've listed several different concerns that we took notes on that we'll address in a future meeting if the board feels that e-bikes would be compatible with the harbor as a commercial activity permit.
Great. I think then our motion will and the discussion will give enough direction to you. So unless there are further comments, I'll ask for a roll call from Melanie, please.
Well, wait a second. Can you please repeat the motion, Melanie?
It's going to be brought back and you are going to discuss hours of operation, safety, speed limits, age limits.
For President Ryring?
Yes.
The motions, I don't think a motion is necessarily needed because I was just seeking the board's advice.
Great. And
I have that advice to move forward. Okay. So again, just making the idea, presenting it to you and seeking your advice if we move forward. It sounds, and based on the board's comments tonight or today, that we can move forward, we should move forward, but we should address several different things that Melanie was listing with Orlando and his team prior to bringing it back to the board.
Right, but I thought that a motion was made. So if a motion was made, then it needs to be withdrawn.
I think Tom originally said, give it a 1-year try.
That's correct. That was the motion seconded by Commissioner Zimke. So that means that Tom would have to withdraw the motion.
I will withdraw my second.
Mr. Matrus, do you withdraw your motion?
If you don't want to, we can do a vote.
Motion, but I don't think that it's mutually exclusive because the general manager could go ahead and get this information while we move ahead. There's been a great deal of discussion. We know we have a direction to proceed, and it would help Orlando be able to set up his planning because you're coming up on the summer now. But if it would speed things up, I'll withdraw my motion.
All right. It looks like the motion is withdrawn and Jim has his direction and we will now move on to the next agenda.
We have a public comment.
We do?
On this item.
Sherry Ingalls. Sherry, can you hear me? I see your hand is raised.
I'm trying to allow to talk.
There we go. Yeah, I needed to have that unmute button that went active. Thank you very much. And thanks again for another comment. I think the e-bikes are a great idea. It's another reason people would come to the harbor. We have a really good mixture of tenants at this point with the shop and Mavericks and the restaurants and the kayak, and an e-bike just seems to make sense. The two comments that I have, I appreciate immensely what Commissioner Mateo said about the location of the facility. Parking lot B, I don't think would be a great idea. If it's over there next to the kayak shop on Perch Beach, I think it'd be a perfect fit, other than the kayak shop might want to make sure that they're not imposed on. But parking is a premium at this harbor. We know it's been issues for a while now. So any spaces that are taken away from that harbor just continue to make more and more impact. And then the other thing that I wanted to add is, while you're discussing this, and we talked about having the bikes riding around the harbor, the location, we need to have something in the harbor where these bikes can be parked if they want to visit the restaurant, if they want to visit Mavericks. What happens right now is I constantly have people coming up with their bicycles and they put them on our bench. They put them on any items that we have outside for customers. There's no place that is obvious where bicyclists should be parking and locking their bikes. I believe there's a few spots that are over on the other side of the harbor master office on the ocean side, but no one uses those over there. At least I've never seen it. So that's just something I'd like to ask if you can consider that as well while you're going forward. Thank you very much.
Great, Jim. I think that that's another important question about bike store or bike racks. Commissioner Tancrowley.
And that's why I think that we need to have broader outreach, Orlando. I think that's really important because the tenants that we have in the harbor, and I think Sherry Ingalls, well, I know Sherry Ingalls is a tenant. I mean, I think we have to listen to our tenants and, you know, other coalition groups, whatever. So yeah, for sure, the broader outreach to stakeholders is something that we should consider. So Jim, if you can add that to the list, that would be great.
Commissioner Lorenz. Commissioner Lorenz.
Yes, I did a quick search on e-bikes, and e-bikes are becoming an issue on public trails anyway, for obvious reasons. They go a lot faster than a regular bicycle. And as I mentioned earlier, San Clemente has lots of e-bikes. Well, they just banned e-bikes on their coastal trail because of the problems they had. So I would say two things. One is it's important to, if we agree to do this, for us to make sure that we cover as many of the possible problems as we can. I think it's a great concept because people come here to recreate. I'm all for that. We should try to make it as safe as possible. And I, for one, think 10 miles an hour is plenty fast. If you've been on a coastal trail and had just a regular bike zoom past you at 15 miles per hour, you know what that's like. So there's plenty of information out there on e-bikes in general, and I'm sure there is for rentals. I'd like to see, I'll do a little bit of research on it too, but I'd like to see what's going on with that, because projecting into the future, they're going to be regulated. And so Orlando, you might want to think about that too before you invest a lot of money.
Yeah, so we when we talked to the city, they one of the people that work there say that's not. I don't know if any of you have attended any of these, but the consensus is that they do not want to ban e-bikes, mostly just for the part of if they ban e-bikes, then it's going to hurt locals more than anybody because they are the ones that use them to get from point A to point B along the coastal trail on these heavy traffic weekends.
That's exactly right.
Also have to coordinate with state parks because the majority of the coastal trail is state owned and operated. And I already have phone calls into the supervising ranger and to discuss e-bikes and what's the future on the trail for those.
You might as well talk with county parks too, because they manage the trail from Surfers Beach down to Miramar.
So we'll have all the Half Moon Bay, the state, and the county.
All right. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Orlando. Thank you, commissioners, for all your direction and comments. We are going to move on now to the next item, which is item 12, Finance Committee update. Commissioners Chankrali and Mateusz are on that committee. Which of you will present this item?
Well, I can start off, and actually, I think Jim and Julie may be presenting it, but I just want to kick off the discussion to say that we had a great meeting and we elected Commissioner Mateusz to be the chair of this committee. So if you want to take over this part of the discussion now, Tom, be my guest. But I do want to thank Julie and her team and Jim for doing a great job in keeping us on track for our budget approval and the budget process as well. So Julie, thank you. Thank you. I think that we have come a long way over the last, year and a half-ish, from the end of 2019 until now. And I'm looking forward to just being on the right path financially so that we're sound. And I think right now when tax dollars, or people are concerned about how tax dollars are spent, we're transparent, and I think we're very accountable to the public, and we're good fiduciaries of the public's money. And so I want to thank Tom as well, since he and I have been on this particular committee for, I think, most of the time we've been on the harbor board. So thank you. And Tom can take over this part of the report now as the new chair.
The Finance Committee met. We provided some insight that we'd like to see added to, and corrections, and just a little dotting I's and T's. All that has been done. So I'll hand over the actual presentation of the budget for the meeting to Julie.
Thank you, commissioners. This is a copy of the 22-23 draft budget. It's as we go through this, you'll see some things that are highlighted in red. Those are areas of the budget that we are going to be working on. I'm trying to get this window to you full. There we go. That's better. So here's the cover page. The budget is in two different sections. One of the sections is the operating budget. The other section is the 5-year capital improvement program. And then there's an introductory section and policies and definitions. We, again, were presented the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award by the Government Finance Officers Association for our last year's budget. We will be presenting this year's budget for that same award. The first part of the budget introduction is the executive summary. This is a letter from Jim Pruitt to the Harbor Commissioners, basically outlining some of the general information concerning the budget. And here is a 5-year revenue forecast in 2021, 22. You see that we have $8.4 million. I'm sorry, Ed, I see your hand raised. Is there something that you wanted to say before I proceed?
No, I'll wait. That was just left over, but I'll wait till after you present so I don't interrupt you.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. And so there's $8.4 million that is projected for this fiscal year, but as you see, that dark blue line decreases through 26, 27. And I'll go into more detail why that is, but there is a proposed law on the table that would change the vehicle license fee law. That was an item that was on the consent agenda with additional information on that. And what that would do is it would allow the state to use the county's excess ERAF money to fund school districts, basic aid school districts, for whatever shortfall the vehicle license fees had. Here's a summary of the estimated working capital. I'll go into more detail later on in this document. The working capital you see here, we have about $22 million. We expect to do a lot of capital projects over the next couple of years. And then we'll have a balance available for our reserve funds towards the end of 25, 26. This is just a summary of the budget process, the budget calendar. Right now, we are on March 16th, looking at the first look of the draft budget. As I said before, there's a couple holes that we'll continue to work on. We need to fine tune the capital improvement program of the budget, and I'll get into that in a little bit too. The final budget will be presented to this Harbor Commission on June 15th at a public meeting for consideration of adoption. The goals, priorities, and performance goals, this section will continue to work on. This is what we've accomplished in 21, 22. We're in March right now, so we have a couple more months to add to the list of things that we've completed. We are expected to complete the West Trail, the ERP project, the purchase of the administrative building, and the master plan. We'll strive to get another clean, unmodified opinion next year. And as I said, we'll present this budget for the GFOA award. We maintain the Special District Leadership Foundation Transparency Certificate of Excellence. And then we'll fill in the 22-23 goals and objectives that should be in this budget for the preliminary budget, which will be next month. This section just talks a little bit about who San Mateo County is. This is something that the GFOA recommends so that any outside reader can get an understanding of what the district does. We have the Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. A little bit about our history and what we are today. This is a section also that gives some more information about San Mateo County, that we have 5 elected harbor commissioners. We have, according to the last census, 765,245 residents. The top 10 employers of this area, a little information about the lack of affordable housing in the area is one of the big issues that San Mateo faces in the future. And the increase throughout this area was about 10% from 21 to 22 for the increase in housing costs. The operating budget, here's the summary of what our operating budget looks like for 22-23 fiscal year, not including the biennial election costs. We're estimated to put $1,885,000 into our working capital balance, minus approximately $745,000 for election costs. We hope that will be lower like it was 2 years ago. That's worst case projection. And that $1,140,000 increase in working capital is a 61% reduction from current year's projection of $2,985,000. The operating revenues are budgeted to increase by approximately 7.33%, and that's anticipated inflationary increase of 4.2% in fees and rents, additional income from commercial activity permits of $8,000, and rental income of the administration building of $100,000. Non-operating revenues are budgeted to decrease by 5.4%, and that is because of the VLF law that's being proposed by the State Department of Finance. And that, if passed, will result in a $350,000 decrease in excess ERAF funds next fiscal year, which is talking about growing to $1.4 million 5 years out as school districts change to basic aid school districts. Salaries, wages, and benefit expenditures are projected to increase by 10%, and that's due to an estimated 5% salary, wage, and benefit cost increase, along with the anticipation of being fully staffed for 22-23. There are currently 5 vacancies that the district is in process of filling. Non-personnel expenditures are budgeted to increase by 9.39%. There's an anticipated increase in utilities, property insurance premiums, and repairs and maintenance due to the purchase of an administration building, which is partially offset by the elimination of rents paid for the building. And in addition, costs are expected to increase by approximately 5% due to the inflationary increases. And we're seeing a lot of that in fuel and utilities and those kinds of costs. The fiscal year 22-23 budget includes the $745,000 in biennial election costs, and it doesn't this current fiscal year. This is the difference between what we projected for this current fiscal year versus the revised budget that we projected a few months ago. We're tracking a little bit below the revised budget and operating revenues. That's due to the slip from birth rentals at Pillar Point Harbor, tracking slightly below the budget due to a slight increase in the vacancy rates. It was 0% as of June 30th, 2021, and in February, it's at 2%, and along with a decrease in anchor out revenues. Non-operating revenues are expected to slightly exceed the budget due to receiving a one-time COVID grant for $125,000, and that's partially offset by lower expected rate of return on investments of $81,000. The rest of the expenditures are to be expected to be on budget. The vacancies that we're experiencing are expected to be offset by increase in overtime costs. Just talks some about the economic factors. We got out of the COVID pandemic state of emergency. Unemployment rates were, fairly high. Now, the unemployment rate as of December 1st, 2021 in San Mateo County was 2.8%. We have net pension liability for our CalPERS retirement system of $2.9 million. That is a $200,000 increase from the $2.7 million that we had last year. That reason for the increase is because of the increase in our covered payroll costs, our wages. The district budgeted a 5% increase in retirement costs. The district successfully negotiated two month-to-month leases into longer term 3-year leases with options to extend. So that is no longer something that we have to be concerned with in the immediate future. The previous district board actions included a pay down of the net pension liabilities of $2.3 million. So that's continuing to keep our retirement costs lower than they would otherwise be. And we also in 2015-16 paid off our debt that we have with outside entities of $5.9 million. This talks about the state and federal budget actions. It goes into more of the detail on the excess ERAF and the VLF law. On a federal level, the inflationary rate is high, and so we would expect that the feds will increase the rates, which will increase our investment rates, and if we borrow money, increase our borrowing rates into the future. Other factors, we have about $47 million in depreciable assets, and the accumulated depreciation is $31 million. So about 67% of the district's total assets have been depreciated. So we have a lot of infrastructure investments that we need to do.
Recording stopped.
Here's our property taxes.
I'm sorry, Julie, I think we have a technical difficulty. Lizzie, are you online? I heard that the recording has stopped.
I am online. Yeah, it was Melanie doing the recording, but I can go ahead and I think she just dropped off. So I'll go ahead and start the recording again.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Julie.
Recording in progress.
So the property taxes are expected to be used for public services at OPM and PPH, 1.6 million at PPH and 1.4 million at OPM, 3.7 million for administrative functions, and then 1.1 million towards the funding of the capital improvement program. Capital asset costs are projected at 11.3 million. There's detail below on that. We updated the organizational chart a little bit, added arrows to make it clear of, the reporting. The training officer is reporting to both the assistant harbor masters in his capacity, and then also included it as his primary position as a deputy harbor master. We had a planner analyst position that was reporting to the director of operations That's now been moved to an administrative analyst reporting to the general manager. We have the same proposed headcount for positions. This is just the basis of budgeting. Our basis of budgeting is different from our financial accounting. We, for instance, record depreciation in our financial statements. In our budget, we talk about capital expenditures, so we recognize the costs as they occurred as opposed to during the time that they're used, which is more in line with what our cash flows are. This is just the detail of the summary that we went through before. And the departmental summaries, this work still needs to be done. We hope to get this done for the preliminary budget to present to you. These are the goals and the objectives and the performance indicators, which is required for us to be able to submit this for a GFOA budget award. This is, again, the detail by department. And we have some work to do in the capital project section too, but for right now, you can see the effect that this VLF, the passage of the VLF law might have on the district. We won't know if this law is going to be passed. They have budget hearings in May, so we may know in May whether or not it's going to be passed, or we think it might be passed. But in the meantime, we're projecting kind of the worst case scenario. And what this shows is that the capital improvement cost estimates at the top of this, you can see we have $11.3 million this current fiscal year, $12.3 million next fiscal year. And then that really tapers down. The top number is $1.5 million. If you skip down to this total ending working capital balance, you can see that at the end of our 5-year period, we have $3.2 million in the ending working capital, and that would all be required to be a reserve for emergency and cash flow funding. The reason for this, again, is $350,000 expected to decrease next fiscal year. And as school districts go into basic aid school districts, that number is going to grow to approximately $1.4 million. And those were figures given to us by the county controller's office. Here, the operating revenue, we're estimating that will increase by the rate of inflation of 2.5% every year. The non-operating revenue or the property tax to decrease over the next 5 years. Salaries and wages is the variable that I use to be able to balance the 5-year forecast. What that means is that the salaries, wages, and benefits, we've historically seen increases in that line item of approximately 5%. We would need to cap the increases in the salary, wages, and benefits at 1%. So that would mean, reductions in work hours or reductions in raises or reductions in headcounts. The non-personal expenditures, we have a little bit of control over that, but a lot of the line items in there are just necessities of doing business, like utilities and insurance and legal costs and things of that sort. We're expecting those costs to increase by that same rate of inflation of 2.5%. The one-time biennial costs are election costs. We have it for 2 districts in 22-23 and 3 districts 24-25. And then you can see what happens to the annual increase in working capital, where you're just at a break-even point in the year 26-27. I don't know, Tom, do you want to talk about the recommendation that was made by the Finance Committee on ways to influence the state legislators, or you want to do that at the end?
I'd say we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
I'm on mute. No, okay, good.
No. Okay, again, the capital projects. Jim, did you want to present this section? Is he there?
Say again.
I was asking Jim if he wanted.
We are having problems at the district office of getting kicked off. So if I get kicked off, you'll have to pick up, but I'll do this section. This is for the capital improvement projects list. This year was, we had an additional document to consider in developing this list. We considered the capital improvement plan. We considered the 4 other options that the budget can list, such as, are we legally required, strong public support, et cetera. And then we also have the draft master plan, which is at the 99.9% level. So I felt comfortable considering what the master plan also is suggesting for projects. So going through that, the Pillar Point Harbor Johnson Pier reconfiguration is clearly at the top for everybody. We expanded that project to include all the floating stock, docks D, E, F, G, and H, electrical upgrades that are required, pier supports, not necessarily only one I think needs replacement, the others just need repairs, and then the expansion of Johnson Pier. The total cost for that project is $38 million. The board has approved the design and engineering, which is moving forward and is almost complete, and then will be complete this year. And then we'll move forward with construction once additional funds are identified. And we're actively reaching out and trying to gain the funding for that. The Pillar Point Harbor tenant rows is number 2 because it's a legal requirement. The same thing for the RV park restroom and green space, meeting with the CDP. A significance, or as required by the agreement, we're already proceeding with the Oyster Point Marina docks, 12, 13, and 14 replacement, which is already funded by the board through the CIP. Pillar Point Harbor Surfers Beach restoration and harbor dredge project. We're moving forward with that. Some news on that is that it doesn't look like we'll be able to begin this year because we're running into the eelgrass growing season. So it looks like we'll be able to start that project next year when at the beginning of eelgrass growing season again. So it goes through as listed on there with the West Trail, the Oyster Point Marina replacement of navigation lanes. Both of those are underway. Enterprise Planning Resource System is underway. Oyster Point Marina survey docks 1 through 6. It's not really due till 2023, but we want to look at that and try to get it done this year. The purchase of this building, which is everything's done. I'm just trying to get signatures. And then Oyster Point Marina access ramps 1 through 6. That is a safety concern due to high tides or sea level rise and landfill subsidence. We funded the design and engineering, and I'm trying to figure out some outside funding for that. Next page, Julie. 12 is the Pillar Point Coastal Trail improvement. That is the improvement of the coastal trail through Pillar Point Harbor and identification of bike lanes. through the parking lots if they choose to come in through the parking lots. And that can include bike parking too. So that might be a good place to put those issues with bicycles and e-bikes. Pillar Point launch ramp, parking lot, and roadway repair. So that's upper C lot, and then the roadway underneath C lot there from the ramp around up to the entrance to C lot. It's pretty deteriorated due to the saltwater exposure every day. And then we have the Oyster Point east side lower parking lot repair and resurface. Those that project may be paid by South San Francisco. We're working with them now on that. The Pillar Point Harbor restoration, that's been fully funded by the board, and we're moving forward with that in the near future. And then the Pillar Point Harbor launch ramp, restroom, and boat wash. That's a project that we don't have design and engineering for started yet, but it is an important project when we consider the TMDL and the comforts for our visitors. And replacement of vehicles and vessels as they become necessary. The master plan, which will be presented to the board in April. And then the signage wayfaring program, launch ramp dredge. It was just dredged a few years ago, but that's placed in there as as a completed project. And then we already know all the sand from that project is now on the West Trail. And then the Oyster Point Marina's 40,000 square foot building parcel. It's there, we can have a parcel, but we'd have to fund the building as we discussed before. Next page. And there's kind of the list in a more compact form. And then we go through each one of the projects in the following pages. Right now we're putting a funding package together for 5 separate projects for outside funding. The Pillar Point Johnson Pier project, the search and rescue funding required to enhance our search and rescue capabilities, the Surfers Beach and Dredge project, and the new tenant shopping center or shopping area for Pillar Point Harbor. All those that we're going to be looking for outside funding for. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, so this will be updated in June. This is the encumbrances or basically the contracts that the board has approved, and then the balance that would be left over to flow into the next fiscal year. And then there's just what the district policies are and definitions. So that concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, receive feedback, comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Jim. These reports are really well done, and the amount of work that's gone into them is significant. I noticed that the first look wasn't attached to the agenda. Is that available to us?
Yes, it was not, there was no hyperlink to the agenda, but it was published on Monday morning after the agenda was published. So it's on the website as its own separate link.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Chan-Carley.
Yeah, Julie, you touched on the CSDA Legislative Day issue. Would you mind just kind of elaborating a little more on what it is that we would want to kind of advocate for? so that the board has a more focused idea on what why we're looking to possibly change the meeting date.
Sure.
Julie, I can
There
handle
was. Okay.
We got published or announced the CSDA legislative days in Sacramento is during our May meeting, the 17th and 18th, and it conflicts with those two events conflict. At the legislative days, board members and staff get to interact and meet with legislators and their staffs. And the focus is on what the Harbor District will focus on this year is really funding for our critical infrastructure projects, such as Johnson Pier, our search and rescue, the ramps for docks 1 through 6 at Oyster Point, our retail center, I think that, and Surfers Beach project. And trying to get the funding for that is really important. And getting the face time with our legislators and their staffs is very important on getting that funding if there's any funding available. So working with the committee is recommending to the full board that we cancel the May meeting on May 18th and then call a special meeting on May 25th to conduct the regular board meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District. Does that address your question, Commissioner Crawley?
Yeah, so mainly so that we can go and participate in legislative day and advocate for what we think that we would need. But I think I agree with you, Jim, that it's important. And so I would definitely, I think the Finance Committee is asking for us to do that. And I think we should. But Tom, you want to give your thoughts? I agree with Jim.
It's always important to line up the issues that we want to talk about and present the desired outcome. And we'd be a lot more effective if we show up in person. So we are going to request a vote to defer the one meeting a week so that we can present in Sacramento and hopefully have some influence that will benefit the district and the inhabitants of San Mateo County.
Great. Thank you both. Any other commissioner comments or questions? If there are, oh yes, Commissioner Lorenas, you have your hand raised.
I do have a question for Julie. In the budget projection for the 5-year plan, you mentioned just kind of briefly the plan to hold salaries and benefits to 1% so that we can control our budget. And it seems like that going out, that doesn't seem workable to me. And so is that just a placeholder, or could you explain a little more detail? Because number one, our staff will be suffering the problems with inflation just like everybody else. And I'm sure they'll be looking forward to salary increases at that time.
Yes. So again, the 5-year plan is just a plan at this point. And this is the first look at the budget. Mm-hmm. The problem that we have with this year's budget that we haven't had in prior year's budget is this VLF law change that's on the table. And if that were to change, the district is going to be impacted significantly. And it's not just our district, it's San Mateo County in general. So our revenues are going to decrease. The revenue for the district, I think it's like 65% around that, comes from our property tax revenues. Now we're talking about, instead of those property tax revenues keeping pace with the increase in our costs, that huge revenue source is going to actually decrease. If that were to occur, which we hope it won't. We hope that the legislative days, and we hope that, you know, the harbor commissioner has influence to say, yeah, this is not a workable situation for our agency, that we can prevent that from happening, because not only are we having to cap our salaries, we have absolutely zero funds available anymore for any future capital projects unless it comes from outside funding sources. There will be no money to do any purchases of vehicles or anything of that sort unless we can find other ways to increase our other revenue sources or decrease our non-personnel expenditures. And if we look at the detail of those non-personnel expenditures, there's some things that are out of our control.
Right.
So that's why it was presented the way it does, that the salaries and benefits is a way to manage pretty much the unmanageable. It's like, and it's painful. It's like, what do you tell your employees that are working twice as hard because you can't fill vacancies or, but right now it's a guess. I mean, it's a 5-year plan that, you know, if we all had crystal balls, we'd be doing really well in life financially, I believe. But
that's why we do 5-year plans, is so that you can project out into the future and then try to take actions to prevent some of those issues. And so I think in the future, I'll look forward to seeing what kind of creative ways we manage the budget, so that, because like I said, I don't think that a 1% salary increase or reducing personnel is going to be viable. You know, what we've seen in our area is continued growth and use of our harbors, and we all know that the infrastructure needs a lot of work.
Yeah, well, and it's just not the staff, it's the capital projects.
Right. Thank you.
Will the finance committee at their next meeting, will they be looking at other ideas to bring to the board?
Tom, go ahead.
Not only will we be looking at ways to go forward, it's like in the budget, Julie had the graph there that talked about the result of the change in the ERAF and money and how this can compound forward. But it's some of it's going to be dependent on if and when the state changes some of these rules and regulations. It's important to remember a budget is just simply a path forward. And like Commissioner Lorena said, we look at it every year. We have 5-year plans, but every year is different. Look at our greater expectation of starting some capital improvement projects that have been bottled up for the last couple of years. And this year, we're hoping, as you can see by the West Trail, we finally got a shovel in the dirt. We're seeing things moved and we're seeing things accomplished. So your finance committee will be keeping an eye on this and meeting periodically.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Giancarelli.
So I think that we may need to, well, we've had a couple of what I would call black swan events. One is the pandemic, and now I think our macroeconomic situation is probably a little fraught with, you know, inflation at a 40-year high and just the increased cost of living. I mean, all of that. And so I think that we need to look at the non-personnel costs. And so, you know, maybe one of the things that we should, I'm not saying we should do anything, but look at like the agreements that we have, like even for Oyster Point, for example, you know, what can we do to have a softer landing on how we fund the infrastructure there, although I do think that there is a role for us to play for sure. It's just how do we look at things so that we're financially resourceful?
Yeah, agreed. Commissioner Lorenz?
Sorry, I put my hand down.
I feel like you've been waving to me the whole meeting. Okay, good. Any other comments or questions?
Can I add one other thing? So Jim, and maybe you may have the answer to this or know how to find the answer. So we just approved this local hazard mitigation plan situation, the plan, I think at the end of last year. I mean, is there any way that we can leverage that for funding? And, I know that this one shoreline situation, they're the Board of Supervisors approved moving forward with this parcel tax, which in my mind doesn't even take into consideration how the cities and the special districts can work together more efficiently and more effectively. And so my question is, how can we, I guess, collaborate more so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and we don't have, redundant taxes, and we can include these projects like at Oyster Point, which are important, and take into consideration the macroeconomic situation. I mean, it's not an easy thing, but there's got to be a way where we can be resourceful and work really in a more unified countywide effort. And I'm not saying we should be, it's actually, I don't know what's going on with the one shoreline thing, and maybe you can give us an update, but it just seems to me, and this has been in the news, this parcel tax situation just doesn't make any sense when the efficiencies aren't there and one shoreline hasn't been that resourceful. But I'm just wondering if they're looking at this, what is the city of South San Francisco doing also, and how we can work together, to deal with Oyster Point. What can we do with the city of Half Moon Bay? I think Deborah Ruddick is the vice chair of this one shoreline organization, or I guess another agency. And I just feel like, entities and agencies are going off into their own little fiefdoms instead of working together for the benefit of the county's infrastructure and the taxpayers. Because I'm not for this parcel tax before we're able to look and see how resourceful and efficient we can be. But this is just crazy that I feel like we're reinventing this wheel and we're being redundant. Not us, but just this whole concept.
And coordinating in the peripherals with one shoreline, and they're aware of us and we're aware of them. But we really haven't been integrated with them as much as we can be. It's also important to differentiate the one shoreline from the Plan Princeton, which was also another group put together to discuss the options available for the Princeton shoreline, which needs to be shored up a little between our property there at Capistrano Beach all the way around to the West Trail, talking about a living shoreline for that area. So
you mean the county? The county's thinking of doing that?
That was discussions. I wouldn't say anybody's thinking about doing that. It was just one of the options that people were talking about to protect the Princeton shoreline. So
Jim, not to interrupt, but that whole planned Princeton organization that I think Don Horsley's put together, in my opinion, has not been transparent. And you've been very transparent, but I don't even think this board knows what kind of discussions have been going on over the years, because Don Horsley has left out the elected officials, which is, that's his prerogative. But this is not the time to not be transparent. And nor is it the time to be inefficient.
We're straying way outside the agenda.
Well, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lorenz, I'm not done speaking. Please stop interrupting me. I'm not trying to stray outside of anything. What I'm trying to do is figure out how we can be more efficient so that we can use our tax dollars wisely. And maybe you don't care about that, but I sure as hell do.
And
so please stop interrupting me. You're out of order, Commissioner.
This is outrageous.
you're interrupting me.
Our
So
attorney
anyway,
did help with this.
so Jim, so I just want to know what we can do to
Trish?
be more efficient and what we can do to work more collaboratively with the other agencies. So please stop interrupting me. I don't interrupt you, Commissioner Lorenas.
Talk about the budget. We are working with that emergency plan that was recently approved by the Harbor District and the county. And we did apply for a grant, and we're expected to get that grant for emergency preparedness and response at Pillar Point Harbor. The other groups we are involved with peripheral, but specifically for the original question are we with the grant money for the budget? Yes, we are working with and leveraging that plan to support our grant applications.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other comments, I want to thank the Finance Committee, Commissioner Chang Crowley, and Chair, Commissioner Matoush, for your work. And Julie, you as well, and your staff. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the final agenda item today, which
President Reiring, I think there was a motion to make a recommendation to reschedule the meeting.
Oh, we need a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
That's right. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Nancy,
Commissioner
Nancy,
Yep.
yeah, Nancy, could I just make a comment on that? I may not be able to make a meeting if it's delayed a week after that. My wife has been planning a trip to Germany to visit our son, leaving on the 19th of May, so I may not be able to join that meeting.
Okay.
Could we have it before?
We could look at another date, or we could make a motion right now to find another date. How would that work? Are we able to do that, Tricia, or we have to choose the date in the meeting?
No, because you have the ability to set a special meeting. You have the ability to call a special meeting. So whatever meeting you're going to set is going to technically be a special meeting because it's not on the regular meeting time. So great. You could figure out a date that works.
So the motion should read to a date to be determined.
Yeah, and maybe logistically, maybe someone can do a doodle poll if that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you, Commissioner Zemke. Do we have a motion that can read to find a date certain at a later time?
Well,
I'll amend my motion to that effect.
What comes up is if we do a doodle poll, how does this work? Is that Brown Act okay? But looking at the date, I mean, Commissioner Zemke leaves on the 19th. The 18th is Easter Monday. So if the following Wednesday didn't work, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh,
are you talking about May, Tom?
May.
Oh, it's
in May, Tom.
Okay. May. All right, got it.
You can host the meeting a week early.
Yeah. Or maybe that Monday, the 16th.
And sometimes it's just unavoidable that a commissioner misses a meeting. It's not the end of the world. So Jim, we'll figure out how to handle this at a staff level. You can send out private email with links to all of us, or just asking us a question about availability.
Okay.
All right, so can you craft the motion on your own, or do we need Virginia to restate it?
I can restate it. That I'll move to move the main meeting to a future date to be determined.
Great, and we had a second. Was that Commissioner Zemke, or no? That was Commissioner Matoush.
I'll re-second my second.
Great.
Thank you.
Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lorenas?
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring.
Aye. All right, we're going to move to item number 13. Do I have a motion to authorize public meetings to be held via teleconferencing pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Melanie?
Commissioner Chang Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Do we have any commissioner comments?
Yes, I just would like to make a comment to throw my voice in to give a big shout out to Julie and the Finance Committee for doing an excellent job on the first look at the budget report. I did read through it and I did learn a lot, and I do appreciate all the work that went into it.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Are there any future agenda items from the commission? I don't see any hands raised, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? I'll second it. Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Yes.
Commissioner Ryring.
Aye. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice afternoon. See you
All right.
next month.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.